Hi, and welcome to the Rare Business Podcast. My name is Adrian Swinsko, and I'm a consultant, advisor, researcher, and writer on all things related to customer service and customer experience. Through this podcast, I seek out and interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, business and tech leaders, and leading thinkers about what it takes to build organizations that produce better outcomes for both customers and employees in this fast-moving modern age that we live in. If this is your first time listening to one of these interviews, then welcome, and please do dive into the archives at adrianswinsko.com, as I've now completed over 250 of these interviews in the last few years. If this is not your first time listening, then thank you for returning, and I'll aim to do a good enough job to keep you coming back week after week. Anyway, that's enough from me right now. Let's get into the interview. So, welcome to the next edition of the Rare Business Podcast. With me today, I have Gerry McGovern, who is a consultant and author of Top Tasks. Hi, Gerry. How are you doing?
Hello, Adrian, and thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. Now, so Gerry, for the benefit of our listeners and readers, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about you and a bit about the work that you do?
Okay, so I started in the web very early on, about 1993, 94, and very much an interest in more the psychological aspect of the web rather than the technological. So I've been interested in how it changes behavior and the power it gives to individuals and customers. And so that kind of area is something that I've focused on. Broadly might be described in the commercial area as customer experience or user experience. And I've published 6 books so far. This is my 7th one, Top Tasks. I've consulted or spoken in about 30, 40 countries over the last 20 plus years. The very first moment from when I saw the web back around 93, 94, I thought, this is going to change the world. And you've been looking for something, to actually get a hold of in your life and actually, make a difference, or at least try to make a difference. So
Sure.
It's been that exciting journey, and lots of mistakes made, and hopefully a few lessons learned.
Fantastic. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk to you today, because you've actually recently published a new book, and which is sort of a derivation of some stuff that you've done before, and a much more practical thing, I think. And the book's called Top Tasks: How to Identify, Measure, and Improve Customer Top Tasks. Can you tell us a little bit about the book and sort of who is it for, the main thesis, and sort of how it came about, just to give us a bit of context?
Yeah. So it's a how-to. It's how to do. These are Top Tasks is a kind of a customer experience management model, or a set of methods to improve the customer experience, to give people a better experience, particularly in digital, but not exclusively in digital. So it's a kind of a synthesis of all the work I've been doing, particularly in the last 15 years, and with my partners and partner companies and UX companies that kind of use this methods. All the stuff that we learned about how to identify top tasks and how to measure their performance. So it's a very practical type of, almost like a manual of rigorous steps and how to actually do it.
Yeah, I've seen the book, and I can add testimony to that and say it is very kind of rigorous, but there's huge amounts of method in there and detail. But before we actually kind of explore some of that, can you help us understand what top tasks are and why they're relevant to customers and their experience? Because that's just going to set us on the right sort of journey.
Yeah, so in any environment, whether you're buying a car, choosing a university, or managing a data center or whatever, there's a relatively small set of stuff that's absolutely critical to you as a customer, as a user, as a person that's deciding to choose that university or to figure out, is this benefit or is this pension right for you? Wherever you're making a significant decision in your life, buying a house, choosing a vacation, or wherever there's a significant decision that you're about to make, there's a relatively small set of stuff that's absolutely critical to that decision.
Right.
And this is what I call the top tasks. So in buying a car, it may be the warranty, the price, the service costs. There's not 100 things. There's a small. We've discovered through constant analysis that even in dealing with health, in choosing a healthcare plan or figuring out about an illness or going into hospital, there's a relatively small set of stuff that's really critically important to you, that if you don't get the answers to it and you don't feel comfortable of the answers you get, you're not having a good experience. You're not in a good mood. You feel like, this website isn't delivering what I really want to know. So top task is that essential stuff that the customer wants and needs to know about a specific thing. And if they don't get it, they'll either pick up the phone or they'll go to a competitor, or your chances of losing that customer jump enormously if you don't allow them to complete their top tasks.
So, I mean, in short, I guess it's you're trying to figure out actually, and particularly from a customer's perspective, what you as a business should be equipping your customers with or enabling them with to achieve the things that they want to do. So it's an indirect way of achieving a sort of a customer-centric kind of approach to delivering the right sort of experience. Is that right?
Exactly. And while you may say, well, isn't that a no-brainer?
Yeah.
Isn't that, but unfortunately it's not. I mean, and you give, say, the most basic example, and, at the moment we have a flat roof at home, and we want to get it resurfaced. And there's no way you can get anything approaching a price from any contractor. They won't even give you a broad guideline of, well, generally speaking, for, would cost, because they're terrified. Oh, no, we can't give you the price. But in a lot of instances, if you don't get the price, you're really frustrated in the actual process. And,
sure.
And we've worked with similar contractors who, when they started giving the price and giving, and here's what a typical job would cost. They got far more business, they got far more inquiries, because people felt they could trust them.
Yes.
Because they had answered the essential. So there's often an inherent. The organization says, no, we can't give them that, or no, we can't, or no, we want to sell this car now. We don't want them buying the other car. But they want to buy the other car. They're not going to buy this one that you're pushing at them if they've decided that they want to buy the other car. So there's often that contrariness, or either that the organization just has forgotten,
yes.
doesn't really understand anymore what the essential aspects of what being a customer is like.
Yeah, no, it sort of reminds me of that old piece of data that, so I think it came from Bain, and it's from a while ago, but I still think the figures still hold, which said when they asked a whole bunch of customers about whether or not a certain set of brands were delivering a good experience to them. They asked the executives, rather, and the executives kind of turned around and went, oh yeah, about 80% of them said, yeah, we deliver a great experience. And then they asked their customers, the respective customers, and then only about 8% of the customers kind of turned around and went, yes, you are. And so it feels to me like it's something I describe as a bit of this Jekyll and Hyde syndrome, is that we can wake up in the morning and we are a regular customer. And then we cross the threshold of the office and we turn into this kind of like corporate monster that loses the connection to basically ourselves and the people around us that are out on the street. And so I guess this is a way of actually trying to collapse that difference and do the stuff that matters.
At least to tell you that you've turned into a Hyde.
Yes, indeed.
That you're not a Jekyll, because you don't understand the things that Jekyll wants.
Yeah.
And what Jekyll wants is not what Hyde wants.
Indeed.
Because one of the things that we do when we do this top task analysis is when we get the list of tasks, we get the organization to vote as well. So when we say something like, oh, what do you think customers want when they're buying a car? Or, we did it with Toyota there last year in 14 different countries. And so we get the team or the stakeholders to do it in turn. And then we can say, well, actually, what you think the customer wants is not exactly what the customer wants.
Yeah, and then the light bulbs go on.
Hopefully, or else the lights go off and you don't get any more work with them,
Well, there is the risk when you hold up the truth to somebody.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like, you mentioned builders and you mentioned kind of people selling kind of cars and that sort of stuff. And so this is, whilst the book is primarily focused on the digital experience, the actual method and the philosophy, surely it can be applied both online as well as offline. Is that right?
Absolutely. We recently did a big one for a health area, and we didn't say on the health website, the framing of it was in dealing with health. We didn't even say your health because we wanted doctors and patients and carers to vote as well. We wanted a broad range of people. And so it's a method to identify within a complex environment what really matters to a specific group. So even we've found sometimes management groups used it as a prioritization model to kind of vote on, well, what's the best of these 25 things that we think, tactics that we think we want to do, what's the best one, or what's the one that has the most consensus that we think is the first one that we should do. So whenever you're dealing with a lot of complex options, a lot of complex and often competing options, where you're kind of endlessly going through political debates or other debates about which is more important than the other, this is a model that allows you to get a list. And in essence, at a very much basic level, it's a prioritization list. Mm-hmm. It says, this is the most important, this is the 50th most important.
Right. And so if we kind of sort of dig into a little bit, I mean, you mentioned sort of teams and leadership teams and stuff. I mean, so how would an organization kind of get started on this? I mean, how would they go about identifying the top tasks? I mean, like who should be involved and kind of, what's that process? And those sort of things, what should they also be wary of as well?
Yeah, so there's a couple of, so the first phase is task identification. Right. Then the next phase is measuring the top tasks that come out of those. And you say, well, how well are they performing? So let's look at task identification as the foundational phase. Well, basically you start off with a very rigorous situation analysis or period of research where you really look out there and you say, well, in people dealing with health, what's all the stuff that really is crucial? So prognosis, diagnosis, where to go for treatment, check symptoms. What's all the things that are critical in this world of dealing with health, a person's health in the process? And you might, in digital, you might look, at your search, at your people that are visiting, but you'd also look at social media, Twitter or Facebook communities, but you're really looking outwards. 80% of your emphasis is in the world of the actual customer. So what's the language that they're using? Is there any existing research on this already? What about the support calls? What's coming in? All the sources that connect with customer behavior. So that should be about 80% of the collection of this initial basic list of tasks. And then 20% is roughly talking to senior managers or looking at strategy or visions and goals and that internal view. And then you get a whole bunch of stuff out of that. You might have, in a complex environment, you might have 300, 400, 500 statements or words or phrases or whatever that in the list. And then you need to go through a rigorous process with key stakeholders. And this is crucial. You talk about where people make big mistakes. Often where they make the mistakes is just the communication group says, oh yeah, we'll turn this into a final list that the customers will vote on. Well, if only one department does it, it's going to be oriented towards communications. If the marketing people so it's really essential that you've got multiple department stakeholders together doing what I call the shortlisting process, because then they balance each other off. So if so you'd have people from support, you'd have people from marketing, you'd have people from communication, you'd have people from product, all the key areas, and then they're working together and discussing, should we call it check symptoms, or so you have doctors, patients, nurses, in the conversation, and then it's a iterative, collaborative process where you bring that messy 400 or 500 things down to between 50 and 100 final tasks.
Right.
So that's a big, I won't go into how to do that, but you got a big research phase, and then you got a cleanup phase to deliver a list that is what we call the final shortlist in the process. So that's a kind of, typically task identification takes anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks.
Right.
So if it was 12 weeks, the research and preparation of the actual task list is about 6 weeks of that process.
Okay, and is that so? That's as a purely researcher. Is there any kind of customer engagement involved in that right now, or is that more of a kind of a desk-based research and also database sort of research?
It's more the customer engagement comes next, but you're looking at all these customer sources.
Right.
You're looking at how they've searched, the words that they're using, the pages that they're visiting. You're looking at them on social media. Like a number of years ago, we did Microsoft Developer Technologies, stuff to develop technology for Microsoft, if you're a developer. And we found one of the best places to go to understand that was the independent developer communities, of which there was a load of. So they weren't even Microsoft independent developer community. They were so they weren't always talking about Microsoft products and stuff like Visual Studio, but it was great. You could see them speaking in their own language about installation or code bases or code samples, so we got a real sense of what are these developers. What's their language? What's their things that they're doing every day? What are the things they're constantly having problems with? They're scratching their heads about. So you're not necessarily at this stage speaking to customers, but you're diving into their world as much as possible as an observer.
Okay, and so because I know in the book that you end up you follow this all through and all the different steps, the sort of the research phase and the identification, and then the agreement of language and the clustering and the shortlisting and things. And then it goes on into way more detail and stuff, and there's also implications around the broader organization. What might be useful is if you could sort of just give us almost like a meta description of what the whole process kind of looks like. Because I think it's important to give people a sense of, there's a lot of how-to books that are how-to, but they give you enough to almost get you started, but not allow you to finish. But I actually think that your book is it's gone further, and that goes, here's how here's how you do it. This is kind of soup to nuts.
Well, that was the hope, Adrian, because over the years I've found that the more I tell people, the more business, there's always a percentage that says, yeah, we know how to do it, but we've got political challenges. They don't believe us as much. So I'm a great believer in, tell people, not try and hide. So yeah, and I take that as a real compliment for you, that it really is an attempt to give you as everything I know or everything I could think of and systematically put down. But I think the sense of the process as well. Some people are saying, "Wow, that sounds like a lot of work." It is a lot of work.
Here's the truth, people.
Yeah, so I've lost about 90% of the listenership. This is hard. It is hard because it's actually hard to really deliver excellent customer experiences and services. You don't do it by buying a content management system and saying game over, or buying a search engine and thinking it is not. Technology is crucial, but we still need tremendous input from management and key stakeholders and staff. And one of the best things that people come back to me after and say is that actually, Gerry, we felt that the shortlisting process itself was a really unifying process for the organization. Mm-hmm. That we began talk about, oh, you call it this over there, and you do they really do that? That for the first time we began to get a holistic picture of the customer's universe, that we began to agree between marketing, support, and the various different entities. So it is a very useful process if you really want to create a more seamless organization with a more unified view of the customer's world. So even the end list, they say, some people have said, we could stop now. We don't even have to get the vote. We feel we've got value because we've never had this unified view of the customer's universe until we did this exercise.
Sure. I think also the interesting thing is that it struck me is that you talk about this identification of the top tasks and the shortlisting and things, and just getting people to talk to each other and having exposure into their view of how things work, that it seems to me that it would probably also facilitate this process of continual improvement and performance management as well.
Exactly. Well, a very strange thing, Adrian, is that an awful lot of people in an awful lot of organizations actually don't see customers as passive. They don't actually think that customers actually do anything. They think they just consume, or they just maybe buy. But they produce all this information, and they don't actually think that, people actually use that. There's a disconnect. We just create documentation. What do you mean? Yeah, but actually people use that to install the product.
Sure.
There's this strange psychological disconnect between the production of a marketing campaign and that actually, no, somebody comes to decide to actually do something. And can they do it? And that often a key question is, it's just information. But I say information is a task. You're not reading information for the sake of it. You're trying to figure out, do I qualify? How many days do I have to wait for delivery? Or, what's the weather going to be like tomorrow?
Sure.
So a kind of this sense of the organization getting a sense that you've got this customer out there who's active and who really is coming, trying to achieve something. And that can often be a transformative moment for a lot of people in a lot of organizations.
Absolutely. And so I think the other thing is to try and counter this is hard work side of things, let's kind of try and balance this off with kind of like, what's the benefit? What's the attractive kind of bit of this? Because there has to be, if we build up the kind of the payoff, then hopefully more people put the shoulder to the wheel, as it were. So what sort of outcomes can organizations expect to see a result of this type of approach? I mean, in terms of experience, engagement and stuff.
Okay, so you've done your shortlist, which is typically 50 to 80 things, what I call tasks. We can debate what they are, etc. Check symptoms, diagnose, let's stick with health for the moment. And then now you go out and you need to get about 400 or so customers to vote. So there's a very strange, unusual survey method that I've developed. It's pretty unique. It looks like it shouldn't work, but it's worked over 400 times with over 300,000 people have voted in 30 different languages for the likes of the European Union and Toyota and Google and IBM and IKEA and loads of organizations have used it over the last 15 years. But it's a crazy sounding method. You literally give them the entire randomized list and you say something like, in dealing with health, choose up to 5 things that really matter to you.
Right.
And it's deliberately long because one of the problems in traditional customer experience research is that customers lie when in a lot of, and they don't tell you what they really want. So this is deliberately designed to kind of overload them. And so that their gut instinct kicks in. So they're not able to say, that's nice, it might be. They're forced to choose what's essential to them from the list. So every time we do this, we get a league table out of it. And at the top of the league table, let's say the top task has 2,000 votes.
Yeah.
Well, and it's number 1. Let's say the 70th task has probably got 3 votes.
Yeah.
You get that. And typically, let's say there's 100 tasks, just for simplicity, in the final list. Well, typically the top 5 tasks will get as much of the vote as the bottom 50.
Right.
So you'll have this priority. Oh, here's the 5 things we must get right. Here's the 5 things our content really has to excel on. Here's 50 things that they really don't care about that much. And you know what, Adrian, when we often do a content analysis of the league table. And in many organizations, there's an inverse relationship to the publishing and the quantity of content that's on the website. So the bottom 50 tasks often have vastly more content than the top 5 tasks.
Right.
Because the bottom 50 are often the ego of the organization in the process, or their pet projects or stuff. So often what you find is that they're neglecting the top tasks because they're constantly publishing all this lower level stuff, and they're not able to, because you can't continuously improve 100 tasks.
Yes. Okay. I mean, I think, so just to go back on something that you said there, you talked about, you asked people to pick 5 things out of this list, or to pick the five essential things. I mean, am I right in saying that you're forcing them to pick 5 and not allowing them to get away with, say, only picking 3 and then getting stuck? Because
they can. And that's a good point. So you can say, so the way we structured the question, in dealing with health, choose up to 5. So we don't allow them to choose more than 5.
Right.
But they don't have to choose 5. And interestingly, we only discovered that over years of research. Initially we started with 10, and then we went to 5, and we forced them to choose 5, and then bumpity bump. So over years of actually observing people do this, we ultimately got to a question which says, in dealing with health, or in buying a car, in choosing a university, choose up to 5. Right. So they can't choose more than 5, but they can choose 3 if they want to.
Okay. And through that process, then the big things just bubble to the top.
Every time, we've never had a situation and we've done this about 400 to 500 times. We've never had a situation where there's more than 8 tasks in the first 25% of the vote.
Blimey, that must be a sharp awakening for the organisation.
It is, and sometimes there's a super task.
Right.
Like if you were doing an airline or a hotel, your book a flight is a super task. So it's there's one task that's way out in front, but that's quite unusual in most environments. But you get this absolute clarity of, here's what's critical to your customers. And if you don't get this stuff right, they're not having a good experience.
Okay. So can you give us a couple of examples of I know you've mentioned different sort of names, but give us a couple of examples of sort of firms that have adopted this type of approach and sort of what they've learned and how they've benefited, because I'm pretty sure there's some surprising things kind of if you've done this over 400 or 500 times. There's some probably like, oh, that wasn't expected, but this is what they got from it.
So an example, Norwegian hospitals is another. So a number of years ago, they said, we're going to create a common structure and interface for all hospitals in Norway in digital, how people interact with them, basically their websites most of the time. So there was debate, well, what's a hospital for, and what's the purpose of a hospital? They had all these existential debates, and people says, yeah, but check symptoms, that's important in a hospital environment. Some people come here and bump it. So they had all these internal debates. But when we did the top tasks, obviously in Norwegian went out people, in relation to hospital, what really matters? What's the essentials? And there was 60 or 80, but there was, in essence, there was a super task, and it was treatment. Right. But there was 3 components of that super task: before treatment, during treatment, and after treatment. Right. And when people looked at the data, they says, well, that's obvious, but it wasn't obvious in all the debates before,
Right.
because they said, no, check symptoms, no, there's other stuff. No. But you got this absolute clarity of a hospital, the essential, you've got 3 core related tasks: before treatment, during treatment, after treatment, because the essence of a hospital is treatment.
Yes.
So seems blindingly obvious, but often isn't in the process. And we've done a lot of work over the years with Cisco partners, the partners section of Cisco, and you'd understand, because most of their products are sold through partners. So you'd begin to understand that there's these essential tasks like incentives and promotions.
Yeah.
So, and then there's specializations and certifications. So there's, so the network engineer wants to be constantly updating their skills, or the partner company, etc. So you'd begin to see these essential tasks, and then we'd be constantly measuring and trying to improve. So we know, hey, this is what it's about being a partner. These are the essential things, and overall, and one, because they're often updating networks and stuff like that, and so downloading software updates in particular is a very important task for them. So when we measured that in 2010, it was an average of 15 steps and 280 seconds for a partner or a network engineer to download a particular piece of software. And by 2013, it was 4 steps and 40 seconds. Because the next phase is, once you've identified the top task, to start measuring the outcome. So we don't measure the production of the new version of the firmware. Instead, we measure the experience.
Right.
So we measure the experience of the network engineer, and the experience in most cases is made up of 2 things. Can I do it? How long did it take me?
Right. Okay.
And so by measuring those things and going back to Cisco and saying, yeah, you've got a download software environment, but it's horrible. It takes 15 steps and it's an average of 280 seconds.
Right.
It really only should take, 50 seconds to do this, So you got a target time and et cetera, and you start measuring the top tasks.
Yes.
So once we've identified those top tasks, we come up with examples of them. So in download software in Cisco, like, we'd have this benchmark task, like download the latest firmware for the RV-over2 router. And then every 6 or 12 months, we'd give that task to real network engineers and watch them as they did it, and we'd report back to Cisco and we'd say, this is broken, this isn't working, etc. So you're measuring the customer experience based on them doing the things that matter most to them.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, I think it seems to me that it's like, if I was listening to you there, it's almost like there's the top tasks method is a way of actually really increasing your understanding of the customer. Then if you then think about, and then you think about how that's prioritized, then there's a theme of around increasing ease and simplification, and then how that gets manifested in the presentation of information and or sort of tools in order to do things. But it seems to me that, particularly in the Norwegian hospital example, if it's all about treatment, like before, during, and after, if somebody arrived who's a potential patient arrived at say the hospital or the website, and the information was so simply presented that it says, here's kind of like the 3 different stages, tell us what you want to do or what you want to find out about, then and you make that easy and really simple, then surely there's a spillover effect on confidence and trust and satisfaction and everything else.
Totally. I mean, totally. I mean, these are the things that feed into, customer satisfaction. Of course, there's other core things, like pricing and general, maybe people think you're not a good environmentally conscious company. It's not the only stuff, but they're significant contributors to customer satisfaction and to customer loyalty. This is a really easy company to do business with.
Sure.
It's really, I don't like going to hospital, but at least it's easy to find the car park. It's easy. I knew which car park I should park in because I knew exactly. They told me that, you're being treated in this theatre. The closest car park is boom,
Yeah.
because they knew the stuff that I want. They have a little app for me that even when I get out of my car, it brings me straight to the theater.
Sure.
So it's really thinking about the journey that the customer needs to go on, and that's based on of a series of tasks.
Absolutely. Gerry, I mean, that's kind of super kind of interesting. I mean, people will be listening to this and going, that feels like quite straightforward. But you're absolutely right. It might be seem like quite straightforward, but it's about putting yourself in improving your understanding of what we know, testing that against your kind of customers, and through that improving their understanding of your customers, and then changing what you do in order to make their experience easier, simpler, kind of better, and so on and so forth.
And continuously measure it. So you say, we made some changes, and it was a 60% success rate at doing this. Now it's 70%. We're getting better, but because it never ends. Digital never ends. This, improving a task. Because even when you get it up to 90% success rate, you're saying, yeah, but it still takes 2 minutes to do it. And really, it should only take a minute.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there is a distinction between the people that are the commonly known leaders in the sort of service and experience space and kind of, well cited ones, and then everybody else. And I think it's probably a characteristic that I described as being, they're just relentless.
Yeah.
And that they go, we're never done. We're just absolutely relentless. And I think that's the difference. And I think what you're showing kind of here with the top task method is that actually the difference is it's the hard work, and whether you're willing to do the hard work and put the hard yards in and just keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going, because it's just part of the process.
We absolutely, and that's the culture, and that's the, I often looked years ago, I said, we're all in service now. So I said, well, how do service people think? And, how does Starbucks think? And and I remember reading books about, the guy, Ray Kroc, who founded, McDonald's, and and he had a saying, if you have time to lean, you have time to clean.
Right. Yes.
He'd be out sweeping the store, and he'd be out doing, and that sort of culture, they're real great service professionals. And, they're not that easy to find, in that, the people want to do big projects or redesigns, but, they don't want to do, most of customer experience is just cleaning and sweeping.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. I'm going to steal that one, Gerry, if that's all right. I will attribute that to you. I think that might be the title of the interview. Most of customer experience is cleaning and sweeping.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So that's a good. Yeah, I might use that again myself.
So, Gerry, in your 20-odd experience of sort of doing this type of stuff, I mean, you've got a lot of experience, and I hope some of the questions in our discussion has given people a flavour of kind of what's in the book, and the ones that are up for the task will, pardon the pun, will go off and get hold of the book. But if I was to say to you, if you were to give executives or leaders or professionals in this sort of space, the experience or service space, sort of one bit of advice about what they could do to improve their service or experience to get them started on this, I feel like, relentless journey, what would it be?
It would be design for the journey the customer wants to go on, not the journey you want the customer to go on.
Perfect. I like that one too. So, Gerry, my penultimate question is there anything that we've missed out that you'd like to add about the book and about the approach and about everything else before I ask you my final question?
Adrian, I think there's nothing I can think of. Of course, as soon as we're finished, I'll probably think of something. But but I think we've hit the real essentials in the essence of, and as I said there, the big shift is customers are much more powerful today, and they're much more independent. They may not know the right thing to do, but they think they know the right thing to do.
Sure.
And if you don't help them do what they came to do, your chances of losing them really skyrocket.
Sure. Perfect. So that brings me to my last question, Gerry, that I always ask at the end of these interviews. And the question is this. Is there anything that you would like to shamelessly plug?
I suppose not, other than the book, the Top Task book, and if you want to find information on it, you can go to either gerrymcgovern.com, which is more personal writing, or the company customercarewords.com, which helps organizations implement these methods.
Perfect. Well, Gerry, I'll make sure I get that all kind of linked up when I do the write-up. But I just want to say, first of all, congratulations on the book. I think it's a great piece of work. It's a real look under the bonnet of some of the work that you do and some of the benefits that it delivers. But I also wanted to thank you for your sharing your time and your experience today. That's been great.
Well, thank you for having me, Adrian. Thank you.
Well, that's it for another interview. I really hope you enjoyed it. Now, every time I complete one of these interviews, I learn something new, and I try and incorporate that new learning into my writing, my speaking, my workshops, and the consulting that I do for my clients. If you're interested, you can find out more about how I work with clients over at adrianswinsko.com. But one final thing before I go, please consider heading over to iTunes or whichever podcast platform you choose to use, and do leave a review. Every little helps, as they say. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and do listen in again. All the very best.